there's no place on earth I wouldn't want to be than right here, in this minute of trying to bring success to one of the biggest football clubs in the world. The basic underlying principles that I want my team to play football that scares the life out of every opposition, mate. That's kind of the end game.
Welcome to the Varside Spurs, the first podcast of 2024. My name is Ritch Grove and I am joined by Lee. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, first of 2024. Wow. I think I remember when I was at school looking back and going, I'll be ancient in 2024 and cars will be flying. But they are flying at the moment because of the fucking wind.
I was
Same as
going to
my
say,
wheelie
yeah,
bin, all the way down the road.
Yeah, so, you were right on both accounts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so our second go at recording this storm that's been hammering us for a couple of days. It knocked our power out down here the other day, and listening to you while we were trying to record was a little bit like listening to a Daft Punk record for a while. So we'll have another go, and hopefully we'll do better tonight, eh, mate?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not sure about we can cut the daft bit out. That might stick around, but that's a couple of punks. We'll have a go at it. I mean, that the other day it was absolute mess, wasn't it? We've just stopped and starting. So normally we would have had one out before, but it's better late than never, as they say.
Yeah, so we've got a lot to get through today. Then, with an eye on that, we haven't spoken since Everton, which was before Christmas,
Yeah.
and since then we've had Brighton and Bournemouth, a farewell to Hugo, and a New Year's Eve. So
Yeah.
if it doesn't go well tonight, we might not. This might not even go out until after the FA Cup third round, which is only in a couple of days now. We
Listen,
better
mate.
crack on,
Yeah, let's do what
otherwise.
we can, mate.
Can you remember back in the mists of time, not as far back as when you were at school thinking about flying cars, but previous to Christmas, several cartons of mince pies ago, we had a win over Everton. Can you remember anything about it, Lee?
Vaguely, yeah, I can. I sort of, all I can kind of remember. I did have a quick look at it earlier on, like the 2 minute highlight package, just to kind of go, oh yeah, I sort of remember that game. But my sort of like takeaway from it was that it was like the last few games have been really. We started strong and finished poorly. We sort of looked like we were going to blow them away in the first half, and but we seemed to. I think it's because like we are personnel wise, we're struggling with numbers, so it's no wonder that I suppose that we look a bit leggy and a bit sloppy at times because we're trying to really squeeze the pips out of who we've got left, aren't we? Really, and most of them are sort of playing games if they're not suspending themselves. So who we have left is we are down to the bare bones, so they have to keep playing. So I thought, yeah, we deserved to win, but just about by the end, I would have think if you were an Everton fan, you probably went away thinking we should have at least got a draw because they did come on strong towards the end. And from what I remember as well, I mean, I was at the game with my wife, and as I say, in the first half, we were thinking this is going to be a lovely pre-Christmas celebration. By the end, I was biting my nails and just wishing the game was over. Vicario kept us, us in the lead. There was a bit right at the end, wasn't there, where the ball came to him, hit him. Was it a save? Did he know much about it? I don't know, but the goal line technology says it wasn't over the line. So yeah, kind of good result, but little bit lucky maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've got anything to add to that, really. And considering it's now ancient history, I don't know whether or not it sort of bears much more dissection. I mean, I think you're right. Always up, really. I mean, Sean Dyche seemed to think they should have got something out of it.
Mm.
I seem to remember he was a bit aggrieved by it towards the end, and yeah, Vicario again. Um, Prescient, really, that we start off this roundup of the Christmas period by talking about how good he has been. Reaction saves and so on. Especially with a mind to what's coming next.
Mm.
Um, but yeah. I mean, it just seems like such a long time ago now. I don't think
It
we need to
does.
talk about that.
It does, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
but we've actually had to cram all those games into this month because we've got the international, not international, sorry, the window coming up where we have a um winter's break, isn't it? I think it is, they call it, and it's but to be able to have that, they've rammed a load of games in because I don't know if you I saw this going around online about where points wise were some clubs last season to this season, but when you look at it, we played 16 games by this point. We played 20 now, so we've had to ram another 4 games in there. So yeah, again, there's no wonder that there's some iffy results going around because people are fucked.
Yeah. Just on that, is there anything you'd like to report on how maybe some of the other teams are doing at this point in the season? I seem to think
I'm
you're
not
bringing
sure what you seem to be drawing me on to here, but could it be to do with a certain South London imposters down the road from us who seem
it might.
to be making an absolute horlicks of it all at the moment? Is that who you mean?
I couldn't possibly comment, Lee. I couldn't possibly comment.
No,
But
no. But it did make for
cheerio to their
a really good New Year's Eve, didn't it, Rich?
It did. It really did. Ah, well, I mean, seeing as we're Tottenham fans, we don't deserve, or certainly don't seem to enjoy having fun and things like Happy New Year's. Let's move from the win at Everton to the Brighton game, shall we?
Yeah, let's do that because that one will cheer me right up.
It's um yeah. I mean, how can you summarize that really? Give me that game in 2 sentences.
Ah, uh, dog's dinner of a of a match. One which felt a game too far. Yeah, again, seems to be a sort of recurring theme. We started strong, faded away. Again, in the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought we were going to absolutely trounce them. They looked a bit nervy. Then they found their feet and completely and blew us away. At one point, I'm thinking this could be a bloody cricket score.
Mm,
They got 4 goals before any reply from us, and could have had more. In fact, I think Bonanotte had one in the net, and they were
mhm,
unlucky to have made it, 6 or so, which is embarrassing in one way. And yet to talk about that. Vicario had a brilliant game, and kept us in it somehow. By the end, the last sort of 10, 15 minutes, we should have, we got 2 back. Maybe there was an outside chance we could have equalised if Lewis Dunk had been rightly sent off. A tackle
mm.
that if Romero had made, there, he would have been suspended for about 4.5 years. It's
Yeah,
just an absolute
yeah.
joke.
Yeah, I mean the likes of Carragher and Neville would have had kittens if Romero had gone in on anybody like Dunk did.
Mm,
It seemed to be while I was watching it, they were very very keen to explain it away as oh, it's a bit of tiredness, just a poor bit of timing. It's just he didn't really mean to do that. He's lost control of the ball and just
mm, mm,
reached out to try and to try and kick it away and again like you say all of those things that I don't think it is conspiratorial talking or thinking, and I don't think it's too much of a push to say that had Cuti Romero made that challenge that he would not have been paraded through the streets of Liverpool and Manchester, at least possibly Birmingham, Leeds,
hmm.
Harrogate, Halifax as well.
Yeah,
Tied to a yoke, dragged behind some oxen, so that the peasants could pelt him with rotten tomatoes. Because
yeah.
I've seen our players crucified for just those sort of challenges. I mean, we should also say about that game, they got the 4, we got 2. We did have the ball in the net. We had one ruled off for offside. We
Mm,
hit the
hmm.
bar
Yep,
post.
yep, yep.
Any other day, Richarlison's positional play needed to be about 6 inches better, didn't it? And
Yeah,
that was the
yeah.
difference in between us having a couple of goals, I think. So it was a ludicrous game, and I think actually, in many respects, that 4-2 scoreline flatters us in the way that we played, but it also doesn't. It doesn't sort of accurately portray how much of a threat we were when we finally got the ball forwards. Which
No, no, I
so
mean,
I saw a really nice summary of it that I thought actually summed it up quite well. Well, I saw a nice summary of it. Is one of my mates said this that actually, it was the true reflection of how parlous our defence is at the moment, and the fact that it hasn't happened to us before has been down to the fact that our attack has had a much better game, whereas against Brighton, Son and Richarlison in particular went missing for huge parts of the game, and what that did is that it put far more pressure on the central midfield and the back line, and just exposed the weaknesses that haven't been as exposed as effectively by the fact that we've been more of a threat going forward up until that point. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it. And as soon as he said it, I thought, yeah, I'm in full agreement with that. Largely because it allows me to never think of that game ever again.
yeah, and I'd seen some ridiculous stuff about not taking away from De Zerbi as a really good prospect of a manager, but some really ridiculous stuff about how he really outmaneuvered and outthought Ange in this game because he played this 3-1-6 formation that Spurs had no answer for, and then when they were being attacked, they went to a 3-4-3, and bullshit. I mean, pure and simple, we looked knackered. And after when we sort of made some changes, which we made some wholesale changes later on in the game, we came to life. And if anyone looked like they were out, thought it was them at that point. They were nervous. They were all over the place. You would not be surprised at all if we had managed to make it 4-4 somehow. Despite the fact that also, we had to. Now, is this the game where we ended up having to play with one player less for a bit? I'm getting confused now. Belize
Oh,
went off one
that
game.
was
That was the
that
Bournemouth
was
game, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right. That's too many games we got to cram in this tiny brain of ours, or mine anyway. That's for sure. But yeah, I don't buy that. It's his tactics that won that at all. There's a whole host of circumstances. Yes, I know they've got injuries as well. Maybe not to as many key players as us, but equally, it was just a mad game. Sometimes you just get those, don't you? It was an absolutely mad game.
Yeah, it was. It was just one of them nights, I think. I mean, let's not take anything away from them. Brighton are a bloody good side,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if they're anywhere else in the country, and that team that plays that football, I think they don't get anywhere near. People they get the plaudits, and people say
Mm,
Brighton are a good
mm.
footballing side, like I just have there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but they don't get any serious plaudits for it. They don't get
No,
any. There's no gravitas afforded them. And I think if they play in a different strip and in a different stadium and play that football, then people are talking about how expansive they are in a much more effusive manner. And
don't forget also
I think.
though that
Go
that
on.
two of their goals were penalties that we really bad choices that our players made. The pull on the shirt. If you're going to do it quick and do it. But to hold on to him like that was really stupid choice to make for Kulusevski. Not like him at all. I mean, he's then you get Lo Celso clip someone. I've forgotten the player's name now. He goes down, and that's another penalty. Um, it again, silly choice. And I know, a few people have talked about maybe this is part of our discipline issue. And whichever way you look at it, I mean, we had some sort of discussion on it on our WhatsApp thread, whether it was discipline or not. I'm inclined to think it's not discipline. I don't think Ange is sending them out there to be like that. I think it's more to do with the style we play. It's kind of why we're getting a lot of hamstring injuries as well. We play on the edge. They're learning that system. There's lots of risk involved in trying to turn the ball over. But you can't legislate for pulling shirts and clumsy, trips or something like that. That a manager isn't trying to train players to do that. And one other thing I'd say, what it's not unlike me to stick the boot in on Heiberg, and I know he's done a decent job recently, but he slows the game down. He started
It's
this
yeah,
game, and and I think that's
yeah.
one of the reasons why we struggled. He's the linchpin in that middle there and slows the game right down. Doesn't fit
Yeah,
our
and I
system.
mean, this
He's
is,
not a shit
I
player,
think
by
this
the
is
way.
the
He'd be
thing we
great
have.
somewhere. Sorry, mate. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm very quick to sort of criticize him as well. I think uh, we've lost games this season and particularly last season. Very very critical matches that turned out really in the end. And when we concede the goal, it's generally because he's lost the ball in the middle of field in
Hmm.
midfield and then not not tracked back to try and recover or anything. You often see him stood with his fucking hands on his hips when their goals
Hmm.
go in, whatever it is we're playing. So I'm not his biggest fan, but I will say that he does do a reasonable job. I think one of the things that he does well is when he comes on later in the game and manages that tiredness is where
Bang
he's been
on.
most effective for us under Ange. And that is because he slows it down.
Yeah.
If you bring him on when the game is slowing, then that's less of an obvious problem,
Mm,
isn't it?
mm,
From
mm.
the start, when we're going out the traps, like you say, he's just a square peg in a round hole at that point.
Yeah. Like I mean, I mean, you can't play at that level and be a donkey. Well, maybe you can, but really, you have reached the pinnacle of your profession if you're playing in the Premier League. So it
Especially if
would
you're
be
playing for Tottenham.
sorry.
Especially if you're playing for Tottenham, that's the
Yeah,
pinnacle of
oh,
the.
absolutely, yeah. But to be fair on him, I think he could go somewhere else and be a really good player. And he was a really good player under Mourinho, and sometimes under Conte. But he fitted that system a lot better than he
Yeah,
fits this one. So, I think he'll end up going, and good luck to him. Got no ill feeling for him, but he just does not fit the way that we want to play. He'll give everything. I respect him for that. But it's just maybe not enough. And yeah. Anyway, maybe we've said enough about the Poxy game, or
I
should we?
mean, I ain't saying that it's true. I ain't saying it's traumatizing me, but I've just had to pour a glass of whiskey talking about that match again. Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's go. Let's move on.
So, mate. So, mate. Christmas happened. Did you get any new socks? I'm
I
doing things in
did.
calendar here, by the
Yeah,
way.
I did get some new socks from my wife's mum. Got me some new socks. I bought myself some new socks as well, some nice fluffy ones. Just for the winter months to fill out the wellies.
Lovely, lovely. Um, yeah, so that's Christmas. And then we move on to Bournemouth.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah,
First thing we should say, really, before we get into the match, is that it was announced sort of. Strangely, I heard it announced on the radio. I can't remember whose match it was. I was listening to on the radio uh, before we kicked off against Bournemouth. It might have been. It might have been Liverpool or somebody like that. One of them little teams.
mm,
I was, and they announced during the commentary to that match that Hugo was leaving the club and that he would be brought out to say goodbye to the fans during during the day at Spurs, which I thought was a very strange thing, because that they sort of interrupted the commentary from somewhere else to sort of announce that somebody that hasn't stood between the sticks for us for nigh on 12 months is leaving the club. It's just struck me as odd, but yeah, we ought to say a word for 448
yeah.
games, 447 games for us, 11 years.
Yeah, I think he's been a great servant, and I think we need to remember, even though the game's kind of moved on from where he's at the moment, and he's a fair old age for a football player. What 37 or something, I think he is now. He's going off to LA, and I think he'll have a really good time there. He always struck me as a really really good person. He obviously wasn't captain for a lot of that time for no reason. Must have been a strong voice. There was one point for a few seasons where he's one of the best keepers, if not in the world, but in the Premier League for sure. He won the World Cup with France. Um, and I thought it was lovely the way that when he left, the words he said, that basically you might have lost a player, but not the man, because I'll always be a Spurs fan, for the rest of my life. He said he enjoyed his time here. When he came to the club, it was a very different animal, if you like, than it is now, and he feels certain that the club is going in the right direction. He's seen that progress over that time, and feels proud to have been part of that journey for where we're headed in the future. No sense of regrets about not winning things with us, because he talks about getting close, the Champions League final, and a couple of times we were in the title race, but just missed out. So he's been there or thereabouts with the club as well. Um, yeah, I hope he and his family go on and have a lovely time in Los Angeles. I'm sure they will. And all I could say to him if I ever saw him would be to say thank you very much for the service you've given our club, because I think he did it with integrity and get, like he said himself, he always gave everything.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest compliment I can pay him really is by just sort of reiterating the obvious, isn't it? That if you say that if you've got Harry Kane at your football club and yet Harry Kane is not your captain, the person that is your captain must be one hell of a player and one hell of a
Mm.
personality in that. And that was the truth. And let's not forget that we changed managers a few times during Hugo
He's
Lloris's.
seen some managers, hasn't he?
He's seen some managers, and it is habitual that managers come in and change captains.
Mm, mm.
Um, and yeah, an amazing goalkeeper. I yeah, I'd certainly have never seen the like of him. And like you say, for a while there, do you remember the debate was when David De Gea first went to Man United that he was, shitting miracles and he was the greatest goalkeeper that ever lived.
Mm.
Um, but Hugo Lloris performed that well for that long that during even David De Gea's sort of heyday as being, certainly the highest profile goalkeeper in the Premier League, that Lloris was spoken about as being, well, De Gea's probably the best goalkeeper in the world, but
Yeah, yeah,
but you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then every time it was spoken about De Gea leaving Manchester United, Hugo Lloris was always in the conversation as being the obvious replacement. And I know, it sort of angers some people to sort of say that, but when your player at Spurs, who at the time we were still at the old ground or still at Wembley, still going through this transformation into the club that we are now. That he's playing that well that he's being widely touted as being the
Mm.
first choice target for some of the biggest clubs in the world says a huge amount about him. And
It really does.
yeah, I wish him all the well. I mean, obviously, I work for some people in Los Angeles, so next time I'm out there, I'll keep my eyes open. I'll probably see him wandering about.
Yeah,
Oh,
tell him I said hello. Yeah.
I will. I'll tip my cap to him and say, he says,
Yeah. But
don't drink
it
and
the
drive.
game, you don't drink and drive. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure he recovered from that dislocated arm, and also the game over the last couple of years has significantly changed in the way that keepers play. The sweeper keeper role, which Vicario plays so well, the way he distributes the ball, the way he kicks. Lloris's kicking as a goalkeeper had never been brilliant, but his shot stopping, and his reading of the game were always exemplary. As we said, to put him up there amongst some of the best keepers in the world at that time, we were very lucky to get him. But the game has changed, and particularly in the Premiership, the way the game is played has changed. A lot of this kind of passing out from the back stuff just doesn't suit him.
No.
And so I think he'll have a grand old time in LA, I think, with his family. So good luck to him.
Yeah, yeah. Who's your favourite keeper, Lee? That ever played for Spurs?
Oof. Uh, Definitely not
Put
Bobby
you on
Mims.
Bobby
Yeah.
Mims.
I'll probably say, Ooh. See, it's got to be Jennings or Clements, isn't it, really?
Mm,
Maybe, maybe Jennings.
right.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my favourite was always Eric Torsvet. I fucking loved Eric
Yeah,
Torsvet.
yeah.
I thought he was, you know, I think largely because the first time I ever went to White Hart Lane, um, I was in the old Paxton lower beyond and just he came out to warm up and he was just a giant and I was about 10 years old at the time. I don't think I'd ever seen anybody as big as that in all my life.
Mm, mm.
And so he was always Eric the Viking, he was a bit of a
Yeah,
character as
yeah,
well. But I think in later years I loved Robinson. I absolutely
yeah,
adored
yeah,
Paul Robinson.
yeah.
It just made me think of it because you were saying about his Lloris's distribution not being his greatest strong point, which was the one complaint we always had for him. And of course, it just made me think of Paul Robinson, whose distribution was so good that he scored.
Scored a goal.
So
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
And do you remember?
yeah,
I mean, one of the other things I liked about Paul Robinson, I know we're going off on a tangent here now, but was the way he used to interact with the crowd. And he would turn around to the Park
yeah.
Lane and get them going and sing along with them and that kind of stuff. He would, yeah, definitely knew how to work the crowd.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I must admit, I don't know if you listen to much football on the radio, but he's now a regular co-commentator on
Yes.
Five Live.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really nice to hear him on the radio. He's a lovely, a really good voice.
Talking about
And
ex-players, did you see what
yeah,
Victor Wanyama said today?
no,
Where he was asked, who do you think will win the Premier League? And he came out straight away and said Tottenham Hotspur. So he's
Hmm.
still fully coys.
What he boys. Keep taking them tablets, Vic.
That's it, yeah. Spaghetti must have more than just a carbohydrate in it, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, before we say anything libelous, let's talk about the Bournemouth game.
Yes, let's get on to it, shall we? Well, you know, another one of those games we started really well and then seemed to make a bit of a mountain of a molehill with the whole thing and then seemed to come good again towards the end. So yeah, very familiar pattern.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you were sort of saying about the Everton game. It, I actually forgot you were talking about the Everton game for a moment and thought you were talking about the Bournemouth match
Mm,
because it is a bit formulaic, isn't it? We are the polar opposite of Conte's Tottenham in the respect that we didn't used to start playing until the
no.
second half under Conte.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. In fact,
And
if you
now we get to about 60 minutes and stop.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I think because of the way you play, I think it's going to take a bit of time. I think I remember reading something about Ange's early days at Celtic and how it took their players quite a long time. You know, they got injuries and they were running out of gas a lot at the beginning, and then of course it just takes probably like a season of bedding in to understand that the quick starts is as you say, really like the polar opposite to Conte and also Mourinho. We always used to tear our hair out, didn't we? Like, why do we start so slow? We almost like go a goal behind before we start playing. Now it's the opposite way around. We go a goal up and then it's back to the wall for a bit. But we seem to get, in this game as well, like, we went in waves. We had, I think Skip came in from the Hooiberg. So, I think that was maybe not expected, but more of a positive move, I thought. Um,
Mm.
we uh, we had because Kulusevski couldn't play, could he? So it's again all these bloody games blending into one. So I think we ended up with Ritchie and Son and Johnson up front, didn't we?
Yeah.
Um, so, but I think overall, oh no, it wasn't Skip. So no, I've really messed up there.
It came on at
It
the
was
start.
Bentancur. 'Cause
Yes.
it just came out of the bloody blue, didn't it? Do you remember? Like just before the game, there was a few rumors around. Then I sent a little message saying he's only in the squad, and people were like, "What? What's going on? What the hell's No, apparently he's in the squad." And then Spurs tweeted out this little teaser picture of the four players walking alongside, and him in his puffer coat, like striding around, and everyone sort of looking at him. And then the next thing you know, he's named in the lineup, and everyone's going mental. And yeah, so he had about 65 minutes and obviously tired towards the end, but you could see the old player there, the quick when he receives the ball, how quickly he could give it away and he could read the game. It was yeah, it was great. Really, really good to see him back. Really, real big boost must have been for the team, let alone the fans, to see his name, a month early.
Yeah, and I mean, also, I think prime opposition for him as well. Bournemouth, I will say, for their credit, are a team that try and play football, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
we've
I mean,
played a
let's not
few
forget
recently.
they had last seven
You know,
games, they won six of them.
yeah, yeah. But more than that, as well as they're being sort of effective, scoring a lot of goals, playing some nice expansive football. They're not a dirty side. We've
No.
played a few recently that have just wanted to kick us off the field, and I think
Yeah.
bringing Bentancur back, possibly ahead of schedule. We don't know what the schedules are, whether it is ahead of schedule or not. But of course, we're all on tenterhooks because we're all wondering whether or not he's actually fully fit. The worst thing in the world was that, let's say he comes on against an Aston Villa or somebody like that, and gets kicked straight back into the medical room.
Mm. Yeah, and
So
then our man of the day today, Pat Matascar scores the opening goal after a terrible clearance. He grabs it and then just says, "I'll have some of this," and just smashes one in from the edge of the box. And as if I'm allowed to sort of just jump out of that game for a second, he signed a new contract to 2030 today. That's pretty
yes,
good
yes,
news.
another long. Yeah, yeah, and fantastic, fantastic, because what a player he has become.
Ah, I mean, when we bought him, we were thinking, Pap who? And people were saying, no, no, this guy, like Liverpool, all sorts of teams have been after him. We've stolen a march on getting him at this age and now because th this guy's going to be a cracker. And he at 19, he was talking about what he wants to win everything. And the guy has got the world at his feet. He's reminiscent of some of the silkiest, loveliest players that you've seen, in the who grace the Premiership, I think. And I'm not going to mention the name from someone across the road from us, but one of their sort of pomp players. But he just looks like he's going to be a fantastic player for for that time. He's only 20. Um, yeah, I mean already, when he doesn't play, you can tell we really miss him. So hopefully, with Bentancur coming back, maybe that will soften the blow somewhat. But he is some player, some player.
Yeah, yeah, a wonderful business. Again, tying him into this long contract. Recognizing the progress that he's made since coming back. The same as Destiny. They're both on pretty
Yep.
long-term contracts. Committing to them as in recognition of the way that they've stepped up and really filled some much needed spaces in the first 11 because my God, we look poor.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, we'll come on to this in a moment, but reeling back 12 months, to the first 11 before either of those two players was in, it was very different and sadly lacking in both of those departments.
Mm,
Um, yeah, yeah. So last game of the season, then Bournemouth, like you say, Sarr gets the first, picks up an injury.
yeah. Yeah.
He's a bit of a worry now. Again, as you alluded to earlier on, another hamstring injury.
But apparently he's messaged to I think it might have been today to say he's okay and he's going off to the AFCON. So it was more kind of like he was worried that it would be a bad one than it was actually, So I think he's all right. We still don't know the Valise, who we'll come on to later on, what that's like. I mean, bit like the performance, which was like in three different kind of like phases. The weather was like that as well. So we had sun, rain, hailstones, everything in that match, didn't we? So I don't know whether that we had players slipping and sliding all over the place, but yeah, he looked in a bad way, didn't he? Went off crying. And when you look at it,
Yeah,
someone else mentioned this. I don't know who, and I think that's right. You later on, Felice goes off and he's crying. You think, yeah, they're just kids, aren't they? They're actually just
yeah,
kids. and they're playing at
Yeah.
this level. I mean, my son's older than those two players. He's 21.
Just trying to think what I was doing when I was their age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I was doing when I was their age? I was sweeping the bloody streets. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the that sort of meteoric rise to the very, very top of that top of their profession. And like you say, the stakes are extremely high. Some of these injuries can be career changing, even if they're not
Mhm.
career ending as well. And, we all know, we can all sort of think back the litany of players that have picked up a knock in their prime and have never ever been the same again. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can see why the emotions are high when they pick these things up, because it could be, the obviously much bloodier and gorier accidents that we see at work in industry are a lot more apparent in their immediacy, but the effects are the same, aren't they? On
hmm
people's ability
hmm
possibly to work in the future. So yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I am kind of glad to hear that Pape Sarr's off to AFCON with Senegal.
Mm.
I'm also a bit disappointed that it wasn't just a tiny little bit worse,
To
so that
keep him
he had
out.
to stay home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being
Yeah,
selfish, but but we had
yeah,
I think the difference between the two teams, even though we ended up winning this one 3-1, was just how clinical we were because they had a few good efforts, and I think Vicario had some great saves. But Richie should have made it, another goal. Song, it was a bit wasteful, but in the end, our sort of clinical finish in told because Son and Richie did pop up and score those other two goals, didn't they? I thought
yeah.
the game sort of ebbed and flowed at certain points. I thought sort of Brighton started to look stronger towards the sort of middle section of that game. But then, like I said, we did score another couple, but because we were clinical, um, we had a couple of chances where I think Richie was a bit sloppy. We can talk about him in a minute. But I just want to pay a special tribute to your favourite man, Giovanni Lo Celso, who I thought
Yeah,
actually had a really good game today.
yeah.
He grew into the game. Maybe earlier on it wasn't so good, but towards the end of the game, he really stepped up. And that pass for Son's dipping shot was sublime on the outside of his boot. Was absolutely terrific pass. And then we just kill the game basically. I know they got one after that, but Johnson's no look pass into Richarlison, who actually just takes it on the first time. So like Johnson receives the pass, doesn't even take a touch, whips it in, and when this is a thing with Richie, when he's on instinct as well, and he doesn't take a touch, he just hits it, it goes in. But he seems to be overthinking things sometimes, or not, like you were saying before, like not getting himself in the right position, like being a few inches offside, etc. So sometimes he's better off when he's just on instinct rather than trying to sort of, judge the game, would you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, strangely enough, that's something we all used to say about Son, isn't it? That,
Yeah.
if you give Sonny time, he puts it in row Z.
Mm.
And yeah, he seems to have sort of matured past that. I will hold my hands up here. I'm not prepared to eat my hat yet. I will at some point if the situation requires it. But yes, Gio Lo Celso, he is apparently is a footballer.
Mm.
Fucking who knew?
Do,
Um,
do you know
and
what?
and better late than never.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I also quite really grown to like him over the stuff he does off the pitch as well. So do you know did you see the stuff where Ange got really leery and he started having a go at one of their officials a
Oh,
bit
so
later
so
on?
this was after Valise's injury, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and while they were so Bournemouth didn't stop playing, did they?
No.
Valise didn't go down to start with. I mean, maybe we'll come to this in a minute, or we were going to come to it. We might as well do it now. But when he picked up that injury, he didn't go down, did he? And for
No.
some reason, he was clearly uncomfortable, clearly in a lot of pain, and he stayed on his feet. And then when he eventually did go down, Bournemouth didn't put the ball out. They were in possession and they carried on.
Mm,
And
mm,
Gio Lo Celso, I think, picked up a booking off the field, didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, yeah. He started to get stuck in, and I've seen that a few times. Like in the previous game, where he wanted to get some players going off who were just wasting time. He went up to one, he whispered in his ear. It must have been something Spanish because it was another. It was like João Pedro or something like that. Just whispered something in his ear and then pushed him in the back of the head to get him off quicker. He seems to want
Yeah,
to get involved in a lot of the shit housing, and from his recent comments, he's saying he just feels so much better now under this new manager. The way we're going, he feels like he belongs here now and he's getting a chance and he's really grateful for it. Maybe that's why we're seeing the better player, the player that maybe we hoped we'd got. But he's, I mean, it's too early to, to know for sure. Maybe he ends up going somewhere. I don't know. But I like what I'm seeing in terms of the way he seems committed to the team. Like the picking up that booking, he was fully with Ange at that point. Because, Valiz, he's still a young man. He's only, what, 20 as well. And he knew that we'd made our last substitution. He wanted to try to carry on. But Ange is saying, look, you're going to really hurt yourself. Go down. We'll deal with it. We'll see the game out. We'll deal with it. Because we were 3-0 up at that point, weren't we?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then that's when their technical line went bonkers, thinking that we're just trying to waste time here. Ange then went bonkers at them, and then Lo Celso decided to do a bit of the Argentinian argy bargy and get stuck in as well, and start saying things and doing things which inflame things, and as you say, end up getting a yellow card. It was lovely. I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and as I've said all along with Lo Celso, if he comes good in this way, if he does prove to be the player that we thought we bought all along, I will happily eat that hat and I will happily change my opinion of him. Um, and the signs are encouraging because he is doing that. I mean, it's no coincidence that uh, you know, Ange's Tottenham are not Pochettino's Tottenham, but they're a
Mm.
lot closer to Pochettino's Tottenham than Jose's, Nuno's, or Conte's Tottenham were.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so perhaps we might be seeing the player doing the job that he was originally bought to do, which never got a chance to do.
yeah,
And good if he does feel like he belongs. I mean, we need all the bodies that we can get at the moment. Hopefully he'll be able to do a job to the end of the season. Maybe he'll be able to carve himself a place in and around that first team, and more to the good if he does. I will happily be wrong about a player,
yeah, yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah. I
I mean,
agree,
I'm
mate.
never happier than when I'm
Yeah.
wrong about a player.
Uh,
Um, let's just go back quickly though to something that you were touching on before we got sort of sidetracked by that whole incident. Richarlison, the question on what I've got in my notes here, Lee, is has Richarlison and Andy Cole ever been seen in the same room at the same time?
I think the answer to that is patently no, because
Yeah,
yeah, he
because
needs
he
he
seems to
needs a
need
hundred
half
chances,
a
doesn't he?
dozen posts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I mean, greatly improved. I love the way that people are sort of talking like he's on fire at the moment. I think it's sort of 7 in 6 or something now.
mm.
He gets two of those in one game. Um, um, yes, I mean, obviously, we're all really, really happy that he's finally looking sharp, looking fit, finding the back of the net. It appears to be coming good for him. Um, is this as good as it gets from him, do you think? Or do you think there's more improvement to come? Do you think he can be more clinical?
Ooh,
Or will he
that's a.
always need two goes?
Do you know what? I think that's a really, really good question. I obviously don't have the answer, but my instinct is that he will get better because he's been carrying that injury, and he'll and one of the things that held him back clearly was that because he looks a much livelier player now. But will he ever learn that about his game, and will he be like Andy Cole, that player that always needs 20 chances to score one goal? Probably. But is he worth keeping around? Because I've seen some people saying that maybe if a good offer comes and we sell him, definitely we should keep him. I think he's a good enough player to be in and around. Is he, if we get another striker, going to be a first teamer? I don't know. I don't know if he, whether he'll be happy to sit on the bench either. But at the moment, because of where we're at, he's starting. Um, I don't know if that answers your question, Rich, but I just think that he's the sort of player that that will always probably need a lot of chances, but will still pop up like Andy Cole and score plenty of goals because he's
Yeah,
making
I
those
mean,
chances.
it's a funny thing though, isn't it? You know, I mean, somebody said recently about on one of the goals that he took. That's the difference in between having a centre forward and a striker. You know, the
Mm,
ball was just whipped in and he rose. It was a headed goal. He rose and headed it in, and you know, and I think the point being made was Harry Kane used to score an awful lot of goals, but he used to score them from different positions,
mm,
and he would
mm.
do more work, and they tended to be on the ground, and they weren't final balls that were played. He often carried the ball into the 18-yard box to score a goal
Yeah,
rather than received it. And it was an interesting point at the time, you know, that sort of switch from having this sort of all singing, all dancing Roy of the Rovers character leading your line to having an out and out striker where you have to whip the ball into the 6-yard box and you know he will play the numbers game and be on the end of X amount of them of 10. Um, it's interesting that you say if we bring another one in, whether or not he would be happy to be a squad player. I mean, I would wonder whether or not he would need to be, because actually he can play across that front three. Kulusevski's playing an awful lot of games. Son's
yeah,
obviously the captain, so he's expected to start, but he doesn't always play in the middle. Sometimes he'll play on the left, and so there's a chance to interchange in between any of those front three positions. I mean, I think we've got to bring somebody in if we can, haven't we?
yeah. I think so. I think even whether you get someone to be another striker or whether you get someone who can play across that front three, probably I think it would be the latter. Someone who can kind of fill in for a variety of positions up front there. But yeah, I think you're probably right, mate. Um, but actually you mentioned Kane, and I'm going to read you a tweet in a second, but it is it is worth mentioning that the fact that we have lost one of the greats of our club. And we're and in Ange press conference afterwards, I saw him got a little bit kind of mischievous and a bit I wouldn't say spiky, but a little bit kind of you probably need to give us a bit more credit now, because a few of them were saying, you're knocking on the door of top four. He says, hang on a second, mate. We're 3 points off, as it was at that point, the top of the Premier League. And, the look in his eye, it was like, is that all you think we should be? Because that's not what we think. And I liked that way that he kind of went on the front foot there. And this message, I can't remember who put it out there, but it's cut from a journalist had written this. He said, Ange Postecoglou is aware that playing his football without first teamers and without those who fit the needs of the system is akin to surrender. We saw that against Brighton. But then, what else can you do when you're missing Ibasuma, James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski for one suspension, even Perisic, Christian Romero, Ryan Sessegnon, Mana Solomon, and Mickey van der Ven? Supporters of other teams will hate this, and I fully understand why. But to beat an informed teams with that many absentees and go 3 points from the top of the Premier League, having also lost arguably the best player in the club's history and overhauled the team style, is absolutely incredible. And that, I think, hits the nail right on the head.
Yeah, yeah. You can't fault it, can you? Can't
No,
fault it.
yeah.
I mean, when I bumped into my ex sister-in-law a couple of days ago, who's a Liverpool supporter, and has therefore got some opinions. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, I'm really sorry about your season, mate. It's a bit of a
Mm,
joke." And I went, What are you sorry? What? I don't understand what you mean." And she went, "Well, it's all gone a bit off the rails, hasn't it? It looked really promising to start with." And
mm,
I said,
mm.
"But we're half a dozen points off the top of the league. What do you mean it's gone wrong?"
Yeah, I know.
And
Yeah,
I think that's like as a microcosm of how other people see us. They
I
don't
know.
actually pay any attention to what's going on at the
Plucky
club.
Spurs. Plucky and lucky
Yeah,
Spurs. I mean, But okay, let us go under the wind radar. There will be a point where we won't anymore, and people will start waking up to that. They're sleeping, I suppose, is what the sort of common vernacular is on this situation. They don't realize just what we're doing because they're not paying quite enough attention to it. But slowly but surely, he is making the whole lot more resilient. And I think he mentioned that. He said, look, he says, we may have lost all those players, but basically what we're doing here is, I'm not making excuses and they wouldn't want me to. We're teaching them how to cope and how to be resilient. And you can only do that in adversity. And that really
Mm.
speaks again volumes of his management because other managers, can you imagine Conte? How many of them would be under the bus by now?
We have only got to go back 12 months to answer that question.
Exactly. Yeah. The year of 2023.
Let's just a little bit then. In that vein, the year of 2023. I think we've said all that needs to be said about the Bournemouth game,
Hmm.
and about the players that played, and about all of the talk around it. Let's just finish this off now. I think people are listening to this at work. Their tea break probably nearly over. Time to get back to the lathe or the whatever it is people are working at. Um, Give us a couple of things from 2023 then, Lee. Give me your one thing overall. Let's start you off. What's your one thing that sums up the last calendar year as a Spurs fan?
So sums up 2023. Oh my God. The only thing I can think of, how do you sum that up? I'm going to go for, can I go for a metaphor?
Yeah,
It's like, like years ago, apparently the way that they discovered the Eton mess was they carried out a cake and dropped it on the floor. And it feels almost like that was 2023 for us. Is like we thought we were going to do great. The cake got dropped on the floor and smashed to smithereens with the way that Conte sort of destructed us. And somehow Ange has come in, picked all the pieces up, put them back on, and we've got this delicious dessert of a new club, which is sort of coming out of all of that, and something new has been invented. Does that sound about
yeah,
right?
yeah. I like it. I like it. I was gonna. I'm gonna go with something very similar. Really. I mean, my initial thoughts when I thought about posing this question was, as 12 months go, it's pretty bang on for the dictionary definition of a roller coaster, isn't it? I mean, we
Sure.
came
Yeah.
back. We had the midwinter World Cup last year. We all came back from that midwinter World Cup. If you remember this, we used to do podcasts about this. Anybody that wants to go back and listen to it can have a real good laugh about this. Particularly me. I know I was guilty of it more than anybody else, perhaps, saying that holding people off for 45 minutes before we started playing was all to do with managing the squad's fitness because the
Mm.
World Cup was coming
Yeah.
and they knew that they were going to have this really
But
congested
but
spring.
we all thought that, and most people thought that must be the reason because this man is a genius.
Exactly. And then we comes back from it, and of course, instead of kicking off, we tripped up, and
Mm.
we ended up, where we did. Um, so you sort of think, oh my God, it's the roller coaster, and then you think of your standout moments for the year, and actually, the defining thing was how long and how convinced I was, and I wasn't the only one, that Pochettino was coming back to Tottenham,
Mm. Mm.
and that it was a done deal, and all of that
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media hype. We listened to all those people that said, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's coming home,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all those people that are generally quite, they've got good accuracy or good hit rates for
Yeah.
predicting transfers or sales or whatever, and they all got it wrong. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And we ended up with this guy. It wasn't even the guy that was meant to be the other guy if Poch didn't come back,
Mm.
We were all getting excited about some fella called Ars
Arslot.
Slot. Yeah. Um, and then we ended up with this other fella, the king is dead. Long live the king. That's my one
Yeah.
thing for 2020 because
He,
he's gone over to the King's Road, so fuck him. And now
Yeah,
we've got a new guy,
absolutely. Yeah, well
you
said, mate.
know.
Well said. Yeah, we were all thought, it was nailed on, wasn't it? It was a no-brainer that he would come back, and it didn't happen. But sometimes serendipity works a treat, and it has this time because it's almost like peak Poch in that time, but with I said this to my wife actually a couple of games ago when she came with me, and I said, "Do you know what?" I said for the first time, I said for a long time, I'm really looking forward to seeing the games, like really looking forward to seeing them because win, lose or draw, it feels to me at the moment we're in a sort of pattern of it's not that we hope we might get somewhere with this manager. We expect to be somewhere with this manager. There just feels like something is happening. You can just sense it, the way the players are interacting with each other, the way they talk on social media, the clips you see coming out about them talking about themselves as family, as Spurs family, the way they, you saw the other day, I don't know if do you see that clip going around that of James Maddison just before the Bournemouth game, going down the tunnel and hugging every single player, wishing them all a happy new year. Yeah, there just feels like it feels like a really good place to be. And I think one of the key parts of that, of course, is the manager, but his insistence that he speaks to everyone he brings in, because he's made it very clear one bad person in amongst that can change the whole dynamic, and clearly that's what he's managed to in a very short space of time mold and shape, and he's got people who just seem very, very happy to be there and fight for each other. So yeah, my highlight of the year would be Conte going and Ange coming in, because I couldn't have imagined just quite how much he has been able to do and transform in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's that space of time thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because we were all told to expect a rocky, and we were all told, that it was going to take a couple of years, and I know, I know some of the frustration about in the fan base is because actually we're so much further ahead of on that curve than we have any right to expect to be.
mm,
I mean, my take on the whole thing is that my favourite period. I mean, I've been supporting Spurs since the mid-80s, since the early 80s, really, but I can really remember it from the mid 80s
yeah,
onwards,
yes, same really, I
Um,
suppose.
yeah, and so I've seen a few come and go. My favorite time ever as a Spurs fan, really, in terms of enjoyment, was the Martin Jol era. I
Yeah,
had such fun because it come after George Graham, and it come after fucking the 90s being terrible, and obviously we'd had Hoddle there, and we all thought Hoddle was going to shit miracles, and he didn't, and then Jacques Santini turned up for work once and then vanished.
mm,
And then Martin Jol turned up, and suddenly everything was wonderful. And I had no expectation of ever really winning anything with Martin Jol, although, I still think the League Cup that we won in 2008 is Martin Jol's trophy, even though he'd been sacked by that point.
yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah,
his side that won it. Um, but that was my most enjoyable couple of years as a Spurs fan because, like you say, you win, lose, or draw. What it doesn't really matter. I went to Spurs and I had fun, and I
mm.
had watched some really entertaining football, and all of that. Well, how do you keep four strikers happy, Martin? Well, it's having four wives. You can't have them all in the bed at the same time. All of that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I adored it, and that's what I get from Ange
yeah,
as
yeah,
well. Is it don't it's so it's almost the opposite of what you're saying in some respects. It's like I don't have any expectation because I don't care. He's
no,
already achieved the one thing that I wanted, and he's brought the fun back to Spurs. And
yeah,
isn't that
yeah.
one?
Oh, it's amazing, mate. And also he just seems to and it sounds a bit proper football, man. It just seems like a good bloke. He's just like, when he talked about that row on the touchline we were
Yeah,
talking about, he just said, he says there's nothing. We were just wishing each other Happy New Year.
yeah, yeah.
It's that just like he
I
plays that sort of stuff down. He's not making he's not playing political games all the time, as some of them are, trying to make sure that next time round they get the better decision and all this kind of stuff because they're trying to screw with the PGOML or whatever. He just doesn't play that crap.
no, no. No, it is a breath of fresh air, isn't it?
Mm,
For
mm,
I mean, fucking hell, they ought to thank us all for bringing him to the Premier League because he's made the entire thing better.
yeah. And obviously, he's just waiting for the Man City job. Of course, as some of the player like Gary Neville and people like that will be now suggesting if he starts to do well.
So that's our highlight then, and obviously I'm going with your low light of the year was anything to do with Antonio Conte, is it, mate?
In particular, that press conference in which like we've mentioned before, had to hire extra buses to throw everyone under, which was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And parts of it, because I was so pissed off with Spurs at that time, I thought this must be true. There were, and I could see it was a self-preservation exercise, but I could also think, yeah, I mean, he's telling it like it is because this club just doesn't seem to get things right, and the players don't seem to do. In hindsight, you can now look back and see, okay, yes, we have changed a few players. Um, you know, but in hindsight, he was so wrong that he says you can change all the managers you like, um, but things will never change at this club. Believe me, until blah blah blah. In other words, like give me 300 million, and that has been proven to be not accurate. Um, I like the fact that we're also, I know that's the low light. If I can try and find a little sort of ray of sunshine within that, I think the club has responded. I think the fact that Levy has stepped aside and given the reins to Scott Munn and revamped all that system and brought in the team that he's brought in shows enormous determination to get it right and learn from that. One thing I know he gets a lot of stick, there've been times throughout the last few years that I myself have thought he needs to go. He's taken us as far as he can. But in actual fact, he seems to have sort of reinvented things, and I think what he's done now, by giving the football business side of it over to Scott Munn, it seems to be a bit of a masterstroke. He Nobody talks ill of him. Put it that way, like but like even just Hugo Lloris the other day, particularly paid tribute to Daniel Levy. And I know it's not going to be popular with some people to praise someone that is truly despised by a certain faction of our support, and I can understand their frustrations because he has got things wrong, but I think credit where credit's due. Um, that tumultuous ending to how Conte behaved has probably kick-started the club in a different direction. But he was wrong, Conte. He just wasn't right for this. He just wasn't right for our club. But we all knew it. We just hoped it wouldn't be the case because he was such a well sought after manager. But Ange is right. He feels like the hand in glove that we've needed for a long time, and it's a velvet glove, mate.
Mm, lovely, mate. Lovely. Um, I think we should pretty much wrap it up there, Lee. I'm going to ask you one more question uh, before I let you go and before I let the good people of the internet go back to work. What are your realistic hopes for this year?
Oh, another great question, mate. I'm going to say, if I can sort of split it into two, I'm going to say no more injuries, please. And I think top four in a cup, I think is achievable.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, I'll go with that. I would love us to lift the FA Cup this year. And with that in mind, we've got Burnley on Friday night.
Yep,
It's coming up fast, so maybe the next time we talk, we'll be talking about concentrating on the league instead.
yep.
Um,
I
but
think
let's
we'll have.
hope
I
not.
think
Let's
we'll have a
hope.
good crack at it, mate. I honestly do think we're gonna. I think he won't allow that to happen for this one. I think we're gonna play our best players. Are we gonna do predictions for that game, or should we leave that for another time?
I think we'll beat them 4-1.
Yeah, yeah, it's Burnley, isn't it? And I think we will be bang up for it. We'll probably have Dragusin in by then as well, who's going to drag us into the title race. And I think, yeah, I think
Oh, I didn't.
3-0. For those listening, Richard just buried his head inside a tea towel. Cannot believe that I've just come out with that god awful joke.
That's it. I'm done with this podcast. I'm not putting up with any more puns like that, mate. I'm from Stratford-on-Avon, you know, Lee. We've got standards when it comes to
That's
things
it.
like
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Shakespeare.
this. Anyway, well, let's hope that one of us is right for the predictions for the weekend. And let's hope that next time we talk, there won't be 3 games and a load more injuries to wrap up in a single podcast. So I think at that note, we'll wrap this one up and say Happy New Year to everybody. And come on, you Spurs.
Happy New Year and come on, you Spurs.
You know, there's no place on earth I wouldn't want to be than right here, you know, in this minute of trying to bring success to one of the biggest football clubs in the world. The basic underlying principles that I want my team to play football that scares the life out of every opposition, mate. That's kind of the end game.